"Who hurt you?" he asked calmly. But by morning, the whole city trembled in fear. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The rain fell hard over the city that never truly slept, washing away the glitter of midnight into puddles that reflected nothing but pain. A lone woman stumbled through the narrow alley behind a shuttered diner, her coat torn, her hair plastered to her face, mascara running like ink. Her name was Lila Tran, a waitress who had stayed too long after closing, too polite to refuse her manager's ride home, too terrified when his smile turned into something sharp. She'd run until her lungs burned, until her knees hit the pavement, until the streetlights flickered out one by one behind her. She thought she was alone until headlights cut through the rain. The car slowed beside her, sleek and black, engine humming low. A man stepped out, umbrella in one hand, calm in a way that made the storm itself hesitate. He didn't ask who she was. He only looked at her, his gaze tracing the bruise on her cheek, the rip in her sleeve, the fear she tried to swallow. "Who hurt you?" he asked quietly. No anger, no pity, just calm. Too calm. She shook her head, backing away, trembling. I just need to go home." "You're not going anywhere like this," he said, taking off his coat, wrapping it around her shoulders before she could protest. The warmth startled her. It smelled of cedar and rain, faintly expensive, definitely not from this part of town. "Please," she whispered. I don't want trouble." His eyes held hers, steady, unblinking. "Trouble already found you," he murmured. "The least I can do is return the favor." She didn't understand what he meant until the following morning, when the city woke to headlines and sirens. But for now, in the dark, she only saw his face half lit by the rain, water dripping down the edge of his jaw like silver lines of judgment. "What's your name?" she asked weakly. "Adrian," he replied after a pause, voice low, deliberate. Adrian Kane. The name meant nothing to her then, just a stranger, offering warmth in the storm. But somewhere, in the skyscrapers beyond that rain-soaked street, a phone began to ring. Orders whispered, connections traced, cameras retrieved. By sunrise, the men who hurt her would vanish from their offices, their penthouses, their lives like the rain had washed them off the earth. And as the city stirred, a rumor spread across every newsroom and boardroom. Adrian Kane had asked just one question, and by morning, the whole city trembled in fear. The next morning, the city looked the same on the surface, but for Lila Tran, everything had changed. The rain had stopped, yet her body still shook from what happened the night before. She woke up on her small couch, wrapped in the heavy black coat the stranger had given her. It smelled faintly of cedar, rain, and something clean, like a life far away from hers. She ran her fingers over the embroidered initials inside the lining. A.K. She whispered the name, testing it on her tongue. Adrian Kane. She had heard the name somewhere before, maybe on a billboard, maybe in the news, but her mind was too tired to connect the dots. All she knew was that he had looked at her not with pity but with something else, something like recognition. The coat felt like a promise she did not understand. Lila sat up slowly, rubbing her temples. The clock on the wall blinked 8:47 a.m. Her shift at the diner started at 9. Her eyes were swollen, her lips split. She grabbed her small makeup bag and covered what she could. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger staring back, a woman who looked older than her 27 years, worn down by nights that never seemed to end. The walk to work felt longer than usual. The sidewalks glistened, still wet, the city already humming with traffic and horns. She pulled the coat tighter, ignoring the glances it drew from strangers. It was far too expensive for a waitress like her, and she knew people were wondering where she got it. When she reached the diner, her manager was already outside, coffee in hand, sunglasses covering his eyes. "You are late again," he said flatly. She froze. The same voice from last night. The same man. Her stomach turned. "Mr. Callan, save it," he interrupted, his tone sharp but nervous this time. "Get inside. Customers are waiting." She lowered her head and went in, trying to steady her breathing. Every sound felt louder, the clinking of plates, the hiss of coffee, the laughter of people who did not know fear. She tried to focus on her work, but her hands trembled when she poured coffee. When she looked out the window, she saw a black car parked across the street, the same sleek model that had stopped for her last night. Her heart skipped. Inside, she could barely see through the tinted glass, but she felt it the weight of someone watching. A customer at the counter leaned over. "That car's been there all morning," he said casually. "Big boss from downtown, maybe." She forced a smile, but her pulse raced. After her shift, she stepped outside, scanning the street. The car was gone. Only a puddle remained, catching the light of the setting Sunday. She reached into her coat pocket, looking for her phone, and her fingers brushed something stiff, a folded piece of paper. Her name written in sharp, clean handwriting. Lila unfolded it carefully. Inside, just one line. "If anyone touches you again, tell me their name." No signature, no number, only the initials AK at the bottom. She stood there for a long time, the city moving around her like a current. Somewhere deep inside, fear tangled with something else. Safety, maybe, or power. The man she had met was not just kind. He was dangerous in a way that felt strangely protective. That night, when she hung the coat near her door, the faint shimmer of the embroidered initials caught the light again, and she whispered softly, "Who are you really, Adrian Kane?" She did not know that across town, inside a glass tower that overlooked the skyline, Adrian was staring at a wall of security footage, his eyes cold and unreadable. On the screen, a still image of her manager, frozen mid-sentence. Adrian leaned back in his chair, voice calm, almost gentle. "Find him," he said, "and find out who else was there." By the time the city lights flickered on, a quiet storm was already moving beneath the surface, and every heartbeat seemed to echo the same unspoken truth. Someone had hurt her, and Adrian Kane was not a man who let things go. That night, the city glowed under 1,000 lights, but for Lila Tran, the world felt smaller than her one-bedroom apartment. She sat at her tiny kitchen table, the folded note beside her coffee cup, staring at the initials AK, as if they might explain themselves. Her phone buzzed once unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Silence at first, then a calm, steady voice. "Miss Tran, are you safe?" Her heart jumped. She recognized that voice instantly. "Adrian," she whispered, "how did you left something important behind," he said, cutting in. "The surveillance at your diner has been compromised. I need you to stay inside tonight." "What? How do you even know where I work?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because it is my company," he replied quietly. She froze. "What?" "Kane Holdings owns the building your diner leases," he said, "and half of the street it sits on." She could barely process the words. You are my landlord?" "Not exactly," he said, "but close enough. Lock your door." Then the line went dead. Lila set the phone down, pulse pounding. She moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. The street was quiet, almost too quiet. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, fading fast. She took a deep breath and locked every latch twice. The coat still hung by the door, dark and heavy. She touched the sleeve, feeling the strange comfort it brought. She whispered, "What are you doing, Adrian Kane?" Meanwhile, across town, inside a high-rise office with floor-to-ceiling glass, Adrian stood with his back to the skyline. A man in a gray suit approached him, holding a tablet. "Sir, we traced the diner's security feed," he said. "It was wiped remotely at 2 a.m. last night." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "By who?" "An internal IP, belongs to Callan Industries. They supply your food chain division." Adrian exhaled slowly. "I see. And the manager?" "Still there, acting normal, but he made several late-night calls." "To who?" Adrian asked, his tone calm. Too calm. 2 numbers, both unregistered. Adrian turned to the window, the city reflected in his dark eyes. "He will talk," he said simply. The man hesitated. "Should I?" "No," Adrian interrupted. "Nothing illegal, just a conversation." Hours later, Lila was startled by a knock at her door. Her breath caught. She looked through the peephole. A woman stood there, mid-30s, dressed in business casual, holding a small box. "Miss Tran?" she asked softly. "Mr. Kane sent this for you." Lila opened the door an inch. "What is it?" "A new phone, encrypted. Use it if anyone contacts you." Lila frowned but took it. Why is he doing all this? The woman smiled faintly. Because when Mr. Kane asks, "Who hurt you?" he means to find the answer. The door clicked shut, and Lila leaned against it, her heart racing. She opened the box, revealing a sleek black phone and a single message already displayed. "You are safe now, trust me." She did not know whether to believe it, but part of her wanted to. The next morning, her manager did not show up. Neither did the assistant manager. By noon, the diner was crawling with investigators in dark suits, flashing badges she could not read. The owner stood behind the counter, sweating. "What is going on?" someone whispered. "They say corporate sent an audit." "Audit?" another scoffed. "It looks like a raid." Lila wiped her hands on her apron, uneasy. Then a black car stopped outside. The same car. The door opened, and Adrian Kane stepped out, calm and composed, his coat immaculate. The entire diner went silent. He walked in without a word, eyes scanning the room until they met hers. "Miss Tran," he said softly, "may I speak with you?" She nodded, unable to breathe. As he guided her outside, the rain began to fall again, soft, deliberate, as if the sky itself was listening. He opened an umbrella over her and said quietly, "You should not have to fear your own workplace." "What are you doing?" she asked. "Fixing what others broke," he replied. "But I need you to tell me everything. Every word, every threat. Do you understand?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Yes." Adrian looked toward the diner windows, where the men in suits were now talking to the owner. "Good," he said, "because after tonight, they will not hurt anyone again." The way he said it was not a threat, it was a promise. The rain had turned to mist by the time Adrian Kane escorted Lila Tran into the quiet cafe across from her workplace. The place was nearly empty, the hum of the espresso machine filling the silence between them. She sat across from him, clutching the edges of her borrowed coat, her fingers trembling slightly. Adrian removed his gloves, folded them neatly, and placed them on the table. "Tell me what happened," he said softly, but there was steel behind the calm. Lila hesitated, eyes fixed on the cup of untouched coffee in front of her. "It does not matter," she whispered. "It was just words, stares, a few late shifts that got out of hand." "You call that nothing?" Adrian asked, his tone even but his gaze sharp. "He followed you home, did he not?" She froze. "How do you know that?" "Because my people traced the route from the diner cameras," he replied. "Do not look at me like that, Lila. I am not guessing." Her chest tightened. "Then you already know everything. Why ask me to relive it?" "Because I need to hear it from you," Adrian said quietly. "Truth should not belong to monsters." For a long time, neither spoke. The air between them felt heavy with something unsaid. Lila's hands shook as she finally spoke, haltingly, the words catching in her throat. "He tried to stop me after work. I ran. I thought he would follow me all the way home, but then you appeared." Adrian's jaw flexed slightly, but his expression remained composed. "You did the right thing running," he said. "You do not owe anyone silence." She gave a bitter laugh. "You say that like it is easy." "It is not," Adrian admitted. "That is why people like him count on it." He leaned back, eyes narrowing as if calculating something far beyond their small table. "His name is Matthew Callan, correct?" Lila nodded faintly. "You said you wanted to fix things," she murmured. "What does that mean?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment before answering. "It means consequences." She frowned. "You mean legal ones?" He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Always legal, Miss Tran. Just expedited." Her breath caught. "You sound like you are declaring war." "I am," he said simply, "but not on you." The server arrived, placing their coffees down, and Lila noticed the subtle respect in the man's tone when he addressed Adrian like he already knew who he was. As the server left, Adrian slid a folder across the table. Inside are records of every complaint ever filed at that diner, most of them buried. My team recovered them. I will handle the rest, but I need your signature to reopen the case officially. Lila looked down at the papers, her reflection trembling in the glossy surface. If I sign this, everyone will know. They will talk. Yes, Adrian said. And that is how fear changes sides. Her hand hovered over the pen. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Why me? Adrian's voice softened, the first crack in his composure. Because someone once asked me the same question, and I had no answer. I am not making that mistake again. The weight of his words lingered in the air. She finally picked up the pen, her signature small and deliberate. When she slid the papers back to him, he nodded once, as if a verdict had been delivered. "You are braver than you think," he said. "I am not brave," she whispered. "I am just tired." "That is where bravery begins," he replied, standing. As they stepped outside, the mist had lifted, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of the city lights. Lila turned to him, her voice almost a whisper. "What happens now?" Adrian looked out at the skyline. "Now," he said calmly, "the city learns what happens when it hurts the wrong person." The next morning, every news channel carried the same headline. Corporate investigation exposes harassment network in downtown franchise. But beneath the surface, everyone whispered a different story about a woman in a black coat and a man who asked one question that no one could ignore. The next 48 hours unfolded like a storm no one could stop. Lila Tran watched the news from her small apartment, her hands shaking as reports filled every channel. The same faces she had feared were now being escorted out of glass buildings in handcuffs. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and for the first time, their silence could not protect them. Across the bottom of the screen, the name Adrian Kane appeared again and again. Kane Holdings CEO orders full-scale investigation into harassment across subsidiary networks. Lila turned off the television, the quiet of her apartment suddenly deafening. She pressed her palms against her temples, trying to breathe. It was too much, too fast. Her phone buzzed again, the encrypted one. A new message. "Do not be afraid of noise, Lila. Silence is what they use to win." She closed her eyes, whispering, "Why are you doing this, Adrian?" Later that evening, she returned to work, only to find the diner's windows dark, locked, and sealed with yellow tape. A printed notice flapped in the cold wind. "Under investigation, temporarily closed." She stood there for a long moment, feeling equal parts lost and free. When she turned to leave, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "I did warn you not to go back there." She turned, startled, to find Adrian leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, calm as ever. "You should not sneak up on people," she said softly. "You looked like you needed a witness," he replied. "Come on, let me drive you home." She hesitated but finally nodded. The city outside blurred through the car windows, lights streaking like memories she wanted to forget. "You really did all that?" she asked after a long silence. "You made all those people answer for what they did?" "Not me," Adrian said. "Truth did. I just gave it a microphone." "You sound proud," she said. "No," he answered quietly. "I sound tired." Something about his voice made her look at him differently, less like a billionaire, more like a man who carried ghosts. "Why does this matter so much to you?" she asked. Adrian's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "Because I had a sister," he said finally. "She was 24. She worked for a man like Callan. She filed a report. No one listened." Lila swallowed hard. "What happened to her?" Adrian's gaze stayed on the road. "They called it an accident." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. The only sound was the hum of the tires against wet asphalt. "I am sorry," Lila whispered. "Do not be," he said softly. "Just promise me you will never let them silence you again." When they reached her apartment, he walked her to the door. The night air smelled of rain and iron. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be louder." "Louder?" she asked. "Reporters will come," he replied. "They will want your story. You do not have to speak, but if you do, they will finally hear what you have to say." She shook her head. "I cannot do that. I am nobody." Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. "You are the reason the city stopped pretending not to see. That is not nobody." For a moment, neither of them moved. The world felt quiet, suspended, then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his expression shifting to something darker. "What is it?" Lila asked. "Callan is missing," he said flatly. "Left his apartment before dawn. Security footage cuts off 2 blocks away." "You think he is running?" she asked. Adrian slipped his phone back into his pocket. "Running implies he has somewhere left to go." His words sent a chill down her spine. "Adrian, please do not do anything stupid," she said quietly. He met her eyes, the corner of his mouth tightening into something that was not quite a smile. "I do not do stupid things, Miss Tran. I do final ones." He turned and walked away, the sound of his footsteps fading into the rain. That night, As Lila watched the city lights flicker from her window, she could not shake the feeling that something enormous was moving beneath the calm. And for the first time, she did not know if she wanted to stop it. By the next sunrise, the city felt uneasy, like it knew something powerful was stirring beneath its calm surface. Headlines flashed across every television. Corporate scandal deepens, CEO, Adrian Kane demands criminal probe. But what the cameras did not know was that Adrian had already moved beyond press releases and courtrooms. Lila Tran woke to a knock on her door. She hesitated, her pulse quickening, before peeking through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood outside, holding an envelope stamped with the Kane Holdings insignia. "Miss Tran," he said when she opened the door a crack, "Mr. Kane asked me to deliver this." Inside was a simple card and a black access badge. The message read, "Your voice matters. Come to the 43rd floor, Kane Tower. Noon." She stared at the card, heart pounding. Was this another step in his crusade? Or was she walking into something she did not understand? By noon, she stood in the gleaming lobby of Kane Tower, surrounded by marble, glass, and security guards who seemed to know her name before she spoke. The elevator ride was silent except for the hum of the city beneath her feet. When the doors opened, Adrian was waiting, hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. "You came," he said. "You asked me to," she replied. "I was not sure you would trust me," he said softly. "You should not," she answered. A faint smile touched his lips. "Fair enough. Follow me." He led her into a vast conference room overlooking the skyline. On the table were stacks of folders, photographs, and USB drives. "What is all this?" she asked. "Evidence," he said. Callan was not working alone. There are dozens of men just like him, protected, paid, and hidden. This is the rest of them. Lila stepped closer, her stomach twisting as she saw familiar faces, executives, franchise owners, even police liaisons. "You collected all this?" "Not alone," he said. "There are people who still care about justice, even in boardrooms." "And what do you plan to do with it?" she asked carefully. Adrian looked at her, his gaze steady. "You will deliver it," she blinked. "Me? Why me?" "Because they silenced women like you for years. If I do it, they will call it a power move. If you do it, they will have to listen." Lila shook her head. "I am not a symbol, Adrian. I am just trying to survive." "Survival is where change begins," he said quietly. "You survived what they built. That gives you the right to tear it down." The room fell silent again. She looked out at the skyline, the city that had broken her and now seemed to tremble at her feet. "And if I refuse?" she asked finally. Adrian's expression did not change, but his voice softened. "Then I will still protect you. But the truth will stay buried, and people like Callan will rebuild their walls." Lila stared at the folder in front of her. Her hand trembled as she opened it, seeing her own written complaint from years ago, one she had filed when she worked at another diner, one that had disappeared without a trace. "You found this?" she whispered. "It was never lost," Adrian said, "just buried by the wrong hands." Her throat tightened. "You want me to expose them?" "No," he said gently. "I want you to free yourself." For a long time, she said nothing. Then she closed the folder and nodded. "Okay, tell me what to do." Later that evening, the world watched as an anonymous source leaked thousands of documents to the press. Screens lit up in every newsroom. A storm of truth had begun, and its first wave carried Lila's quiet courage behind it. At the top of Kane Tower, Adrian stood by the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. His assistant entered. "Sir, it is done. The files are out." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Good. Let them tremble." Down below, in her apartment, Lila sat beside the coat he had once given her, whispering to the empty room. "You asked who hurt me, Adrian. Maybe now they all know." The city did not sleep that night. News anchors spoke with trembling urgency. Hashtags flooded every screen, and for once, the world seemed to stop pretending. The leak had changed everything. Lila Tran sat on her couch, the glow of her television reflecting in her tired eyes. Every network repeated the same words: abuse, corruption, accountability. And then, one sentence that made her freeze. Anonymous whistleblower believed to be a woman connected to Kane Holdings. Her breath caught. The phone rang almost immediately, but she did not answer. She knew who it would be: Adrian. She let it ring until it stopped, her chest tight with fear and disbelief. Outside her window, cameras flashed from the street. Reporters were already gathering. She backed away slowly, closing the curtains, whispering to herself. This was not supposed to happen. The encrypted phone buzzed again. This time, a message appeared. "Do not panic. They cannot prove it was you. I am coming." She stared at the words, her heart pounding. "No," she whispered. "Please, do not come here." But it was too late. 30 minutes later, a black car stopped outside her building. Adrian stepped out, flanked by 2 men in suits who looked like shadows pulled from the night. He entered without knocking, moving through the hallway like someone who already knew his way. When she saw him, her relief mixed with anger. "You told me this would stay anonymous," she cried. Adrian's voice was calm, but his eyes were heavy with regret. "It should have. Someone inside the media team leaked your connection. They want to scare you, make you retract the evidence." "And what happens if I do?" she demanded. "They win," he said simply, "and everything you risked means nothing." "I did not ask for this war," she shouted. "You did." Adrian took a slow breath. "You are right. I started it. But it only mattered because you stood beside me." Lila turned away, trembling. "They will destroy me." "No," he said firmly. "They will try, but they will not succeed." His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. Callan was spotted. He is not running. He is meeting with investors downtown. They are trying to spin the story before the board hearing. "Then go," she said bitterly. "Do what you do best." Adrian looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You think I enjoy this?" She did not answer. "Every time I use power," he said, "I hear my sister's voice asking if I am any different from the men I fight. I never know how to answer her." Lila's anger softened. "You are trying to do good," she said. "Sometimes good hurts." He smiled faintly, the sadness behind it almost invisible. "It should not have to hurt you." He turned toward the door, then stopped. "Lock your windows. Keep the phone close. If they come to you, you call me first." When he was gone, the apartment felt colder. She watched from the window as his car disappeared into the rain. Hours passed. Near midnight, the television cut to breaking news. Adrian Kane confronts Callan at board meeting live coverage. The feed showed a sea of cameras, flashes, and shouting reporters. Adrian stood before a wall of microphones, his expression carved in stone. "This city has hidden too many sins behind glass towers," he said. "Today, that ends." Callan appeared beside him, smug, defiant. But as Adrian spoke, evidence flashed on screens behind them, emails, contracts, payments. The board members looked horrified. Callan's confidence cracked. Lila watched, her hands covering her mouth. Adrian's voice was calm, measured. "Justice is not vengeance," he said. "It is truth with a name." By the end of the broadcast, Callan was escorted away by security. Adrian turned toward the cameras. For the briefest moment, his eyes seemed to meet hers through the screen. "No one should ever have to whisper who hurt them again," he said. Then he walked off stage, leaving a silence louder than thunder. By dawn, the city felt different. The air carried a strange stillness, like something heavy had finally broken. The headlines screamed about the downfall of Callan Industries and the courage of Kane Holdings' CEO, but inside Lila Tran's apartment, silence reigned. She sat by the window, wrapped in the same black coat Adrian had given her that first night, staring at the skyline. It was over, they said. But she could not shake the question, what did over really mean for someone like her? A knock at the door broke her thoughts. She opened it to find a young assistant holding a small envelope embossed with gold. "Mr. Kane asked me to deliver this personally," the woman said. Inside was a single invitation card. "Press Gala Kane Foundation, Rebuilding Trust, formal attire required." Lila frowned, confused. She whispered to herself, "He is hosting a gala now, after all of this?" The assistant smiled gently. "He said it is not a celebration, it is an apology." That night, Lila stood at the edge of the grand ballroom inside Kane Tower. The chandeliers cast soft light across a sea of people in dark suits and glittering dresses. Reporters whispered, cameras clicked, but the air was tense, charged. On the stage, Adrian stood before a microphone, his black tuxedo crisp, his expression composed but unreadable. "Tonight is not about victory," he began. "It is about responsibility. We exposed corruption, yes, but we also exposed a wound this city ignored for too long. To rebuild trust, we must start by believing those who were never heard." The crowd applauded politely, but Adrian's eyes were not on them. They were searching until they found her. Lila stood near the back, her hands clasped tightly. Their eyes met, and for a second, the noise around them vanished. After the speeches ended, Adrian walked through the crowd toward her. Every camera turned. "You should not have come," he said softly when he reached her. "You invited me," she replied. "You think I send invitations to every person who changes the world?" he said with a faint smile. "You did not change the world," she said quietly. "You just forced it to look at itself." He laughed under his breath, a sound that carried both relief and sadness. "That is more than I ever managed before you." "Why me?" she asked. "You could have used anyone's story." "Because you did not ask for help," he said. "You survived without it. That makes what you did real." Lila looked away, her voice trembling. "They will forget me, Adrian. They always do." "Not this time," he said. "Not while I have breath left in me." The music softened as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a new necklace, simple and silver, shaped like a broken circle completed again. "You left something behind that night," he said, placing it in her hand. "I thought you might want to replace it." Tears welled in her eyes. "You kept it?" "I keep everything that matters," he said quietly. "Even the mistakes." She looked at the necklace, then at him. "You did not owe me anything," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That is why it matters." The room seemed to fade around them, the flashes of cameras turning into distant sparks. "So what happens now?" she asked. Adrian's expression softened. "Now," he said, "we rebuild together." But before she could answer, a security guard rushed to the stage, whispering urgently into his earpiece. Adrian's gaze darkened. "What is it?" she asked. "There was an incident outside," he said. "Someone tried to breach the building." Her blood ran cold. "Who?" "They do not know yet," he replied, eyes sharp again. "But I will." As he moved toward the exit, he turned back once more. "Stay here, Lila. This time, let me protect something without losing it." She nodded, clutching the necklace as he disappeared into the shadows of his own creation. The gala lights continued to shimmer, but for the first time, she understood they were not celebrating power anymore. They were witnessing what it looked like when power finally chose to protect. Outside the gala, the city pulsed with blue and red lights. Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing against the steel and glass of Kane Tower. Adrian Kane stepped into the rain, his security detail moving swiftly ahead, scanning every corner. The storm that had hovered all week had finally broken, washing the streets clean, but something inside him remained unsettled. The man waiting at the far end of the street wore a dark coat, collar turned up, his face hidden in shadow. Adrian approached slowly. "Callan," he said evenly. The figure looked up. It was him, disheveled, trembling, but still defiant. "You ruined me," Callan hissed. "You turned everyone against me." "No," Adrian replied, voice calm, measured. "You did that yourself." "You think you are a hero?" Callan spat. "You think this city loves you for destroying me?" Adrian took a step closer, his presence quiet but commanding. "I do not care if they love me," he said. "I care that they finally see what people like you have done." Callan's hand twitched near his pocket, but before he could move, Adrian's men were already there, disarming him, pulling out a small pistol wrapped in plastic. Adrian did not flinch. "You are done," he said softly. "Go quietly, or spend what is left of your life in a cage." Callan's voice cracked. "You will regret this, Kane. You always go too far." Adrian's gaze hardened. "Maybe, but not tonight." The police arrived moments later, taking Callan into custody. As the sirens faded, Adrian stood motionless, rain dripping from his hair, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Somewhere inside that tower, Lila waited, her heart pacing with every second that passed. When he finally returned, soaked but composed, she ran to him without thinking. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," he said, catching his breath. "It is over." She searched his face. "Is it really?" He nodded slowly. "This time, yes." The tension in her shoulders eased, and for the first time, he saw her smile, not the shy, cautious one she used to wear, but something steady, real. "You did what you promised," she said quietly. "You made the city listen." "We did," he corrected. You made them see the truth. I just gave them no choice but to look." She stepped closer, eyes glistening. "You could have walked away from all of this, Adrian. Why didn't you?" He hesitated, then said softly, "Because when I saw you that night, standing in the rain, bruised and silent, I saw every person I had failed to protect. I could not fail again." She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his. "You did not fail this time," he smiled faintly. "Neither did you." Later that week, the city held its breath as the first victims from the investigation spoke publicly. For the first time in years, no one interrupted, no one dismissed their words. Adrian stood at the back of the press room, unseen, while Lila stood on the stage, steady and unafraid. "Silence is not peace," she said into the microphone. "It is surrender, and we are done surrendering." The applause that followed was not thunderous, but it was honest. Adrian felt something inside him, ease, something he had carried too long. When the event ended, he waited for her by the exit. "You were brilliant," he said. "You should be proud." "I am," she said, smiling up at him, "but I am more grateful than proud." "For what?" he asked. "For that night," she said. "For asking the only question that ever mattered." He chuckled softly. "It was a simple question." "Yes," she said, "but you listened to the answer." Weeks later, a new sign appeared on the side of Kane Tower. "The Shield Foundation, empowering the voiceless." Below it, a plaque read, "Founded in honor of those who chose to speak." Inside the lobby, encased in glass, hung the same black coat Adrian had once given her. Lila walked by it every morning, running her fingers along the engraved words below. "Who hurt you?" The question that changed everything. And every evening, when the city lights came on, Adrian would find her waiting by the window of her new office, her reflection merging with his in the glass. He would smile, and she would whisper the same words she did that first night in the rain. "No one," she said softly, "not anymore."